promised, we're going to hit that breaking news as a judge has now officially ordered the federal government to use funds for SNAP benefits. Want to put up this live vantage point that we have there in Washington, D.C. Of course, we have been waiting for this judgment as those SNAP benefits, also known as food stamps, were set to expire tomorrow, November 1st. And so many were facing questions of how they would continue to feed themselves. But just coming there from Boston, judges have now ordered the federal government to use contingency funds for SNAP food aid payments during this shutdown. And so to talk a lot more about what we're seeing here, how this was set up, and how we got to the point that we're at now, I want to bring into the conversation legal analyst Neama Rahmani. Neama, thanks so much for being with us. Perfect timing as this news just came out a few minutes ago that SNAP benefits have now been ruled by this federal judge to continue to go while the government is shut down.
Christina, thanks for having me. And you're right, breaking news. And this is something we've been following for the past more than 24 hours now. Many of us expected a ruling yesterday, but Judge Talwani in Massachusetts issued her ruling today. And it really comes down to those contingency funds in the Department of Agriculture. So obviously we know there's a government shutdown and Congress can pass a spending bill, a continuing resolution, standalone legislation related to these SNAP benefits. But this isn't politics, this is the law. And approximately half the states in the District of Columbia, they filed a lawsuit challenging the Department of Agriculture's refusal to release these contingency funds. Now, we're talking about more than $5 billion. Seems like a lot of money, but the SNAP program costs the department approximately $8.5 to $9 billion a month. So this will only get us through a few weeks, but the Department of Agriculture's position has been that these contingency funds can only be used for an emergency. And they describe that emergency to be a natural disaster, not something political like a government shutdown. But the judge apparently disagreed, and she ruled that this is the type of emergency that would require the release of those contingency funds.
And so, Neama, I want to put this up on the screen and just also show people the vantage point that we have there when it comes to some of this breaking news. Inside of our newsroom, we just got this tweet up on your screen. Want to put it there from Reuters as well, showing that the federal judge in Rhode Island today decided to also block President Donald Trump's administration from suspending all food aid for millions of Americans amid this ongoing government shutdown. Neama, I have to ask you, a lot of question about precedents was asked here, whether or not this would continue on, because in the 61 years that SNAP benefits have been out there hasn't been a lapse for folks who so heavily rely on it. 1 in 8 Americans.
And that's an important issue in this case. And not only decades of precedent, but also the 2008 Food and Nutrition Act that says that the Department of Agriculture shall provide these benefits. So what the states argued was that this was a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. This is a federal agency that is really ignoring federal law by making this decision not to release the funds. And this is something that was arbitrary, it was capricious, and it went against years of precedent. Now, previously, when we've had shutdowns, either the funds have been released or usually the Department of Agriculture, what they've done is anticipated the shutdown and preloaded money on those debit cards. That's what happened during the shutdown during the first Trump administration. Obviously, things are very political right now, and the department took a very different stance this time around, and I think that's something that this judge took issue with. Now, I don't think it's the end of the road here. We know that the government will appeal to the First Circuit Court of Appeals in a case like this of significant importance for tens of millions of Americans that is going to potentially cost billions of dollars. I wouldn't be surprised if we also get an emergency application to the U.S. Supreme Court.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. Where does this go next? We know that the Trump administration has been saying that they want the government to be reopened. They're saying that other things are also impacted by this. We have to remember that military members are also not getting paid during this shutdown. Federal workers have been furloughed or let go. So a lot of people are hurting. It's interesting to see that this portion is allowed to go forward.
No question. This is just the beginning of a legal case. And we know that any type of injunction or restraining order, that can be immediately appealed. And obviously the government will do that. And people are going to ask, who is this judge? This is Judge Talwani in the District of Massachusetts. a Barack Obama appointee. Of course, again, this is not just a legal case, but a political one as well. She was previously probably most famous for handling the Varsity Blues college admissions scandal case. But obviously, this case is something of constitutional significance, something that has broken away from precedent, not in the legal sense, but in terms of how the Department of Agriculture has previously handled these types of cases. And the question is, can they choose not to release funds when a federal statute says they have to? And what is this contingency fund for? Is it for a natural disaster or an emergency like this? And but let's be real, this is only going to get the SNAP benefits going through mid to late November. It's not even going to get us through the end of December. So this is just a temporary solution, if at all. But we'll see if the Court of Appeals puts a stay or puts a pause on this order. I don't think SNAP recipients are necessarily out of the woods yet. And I wouldn't be counting on those benefits come November 1st. I think it's still a little early now.
That's exactly where I was going to go next. I know you can't predict how the government is going to run, but you've had experience in these legal cases. And there was expected that there might be a delay. Do you think that if that delay is in place, that those funds won't be released at all in the month of November while this case is being litigated?
I wouldn't be surprised, Christina, if even in spite of this order that those funds aren't released. Expect the government to apply for an emergency stay, and ultimately, even if they don't release the funds, a federal judge would have to hold them in contempt and issue additional orders. Right now, they've issued the initial and temporary restraining order, but we haven't had a hearing on a permanent injunction. I expect that that will happen while this appeal plays out, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Court of Appeal says, you know what, we want to take a closer look at this. This order will be stayed or put on hold while a 3-judge panel hears it. But again, we might even skip that and end up going straight to the Supreme Court. This is such an important legal issue.
It certainly is, and it's one that affects millions of Americans. They've been very vocal. We've heard from so many different members there on Capitol Hill talking about the overall effects of the government shutdown. Neama Rahmani, our legal analyst, here with us. Neama, anything else that we didn't touch on as it pertains to this judgment? I want to put it back up on the screen as well for folks at home. Once again, the federal judge there in Rhode Island, of course, the news also coming out of Boston that they have blocked President Trump's administration from suspending all food aid for millions of Americans. Neama, anything that we missed?
No, I think we covered everything, Christina. This is just the first step, and what will be continuing litigation on this issue over the next several days.
And so we'll hope that you'll join us once again if we get any updates. Again, legal analyst Neama Rahmani, friend to the show, helping us break down the very latest.
Thanks, Christina. Talk soon.